So yes, I've been doing research into what we consider now the human biofield for about 30 years. I've been very lucky to be supported through the United Nations in India first for a couple of decades at a facility called MIT, which is one of the biggest universities in the world. We have, I think, 65,000 students. And more recently, I've been collaborating to develop something we call the Human Biofield Project. I don't know whether you can see all the boxes on this screen, whether we're blocking that, but there's also a kind of public portal called the Energy Medicine Exchange on Facebook, which I'd encourage any of you to join who are listening. So basically, I think it's important for me, before I go on to my particular Kundalini study that we've done in our lab, is to talk a little bit about the biofield. I have to say the previous speaker's presentation really lit me up, and I feel that whoever, of course, you guys at the Emerging Science Foundation have really woven together an interesting group of speakers because of what we're speaking to and how that then links up to address the main theme of the conference. So anyhow, we're talking about the human atmosphere, very similar to the planetary atmosphere, but we're also addressing something that's been in our conscious awareness for thousands of years, and several notable clairvoyant artists along the way were able to depict these anatomical features of the biofield, and they come from all of the different traditions, but they do have the most wonderful insights. And if you're prepared to follow the legend of all of these maps, whether they're 3D in bronze or stone or old fabrics and papers, we certainly are able to decipher with our modern equipment a correlation, and it's almost as if the rishis were trying to communicate to us with the petals of the chakras, that they were aware each chakra was responsible for a different range of frequencies in the spectrum that the human being vibrates at. So it's a fascinating message coming through in these beautiful old maps of the biofield and its anatomical features, in this case the chakras from the Vedic traditions. But the commonality between the main features is in all traditions, and there's no doubt about that. There's certainly been some misunderstandings about the Nadis and the meridians, but I think we're really clear that we're all talking about the same thing. And for many years we've had to rely on clairvoyance depicting individual energetic patterns and biofield symmetries, but I'm happy to say that we've entered a new age. We've had to wait for an industrial revolution, a computer revolution, high-tech revolution to deliver the type of technology which allows us to image what wonderful artists like Alex Gray were depicting in the last 20 or 30 years. This from his fabulous book, Sacred Mirrors. As you can see here, there's lots of different ways of looking at an orange. We can peer inside it with medical devices, but we can also see the sort of biophotonic bioplasma emanating from within and without the orange with such devices as electrographic imaging. And this plasma is just the fourth state of matter, but it's a significant factor in our well-being and how we treat our food. For example, here you can see how microwaving an apple can damage that biofield of the apple. So what we're really talking about, as I said, is the fourth state of matter. And in school we were taught, solid, liquid, gas, ether or plasma. but we haven't really kind of been following up on the ether side of things. I think about 100 years ago, a few scientists who didn't have the sensitive equipment we have decided it wasn't worth measuring and dropped it. But we're very much picked up the ball around the world, and there are a number of institutes, a number of technologies which are very comfortable with measuring this kind of emanation from the body. I mean, the body physically goes to the bathroom to eliminate solid waste, liquid waste also, but we spit and cry and sweat too. We fart and belch like the best of us, but the plasma, the bioplasma that we emanate from the body is emanated from the chakras and the acupuncture points. And sometimes the acupuncturist needs to get a needle to unblock those points. We have modern technology now and ancient technology that we use for stimulating and harmonizing the plasma of the body. As we can see from these 6 different images, we're really seeing the toroidal vortex, the sort of donut field measured simply by institutes such as HeartMath, the heart field, but the entire biofield becomes this toroidal system, and obviously is very entwined with what we understand as Kundalini at the moment. Again, from a scientific perspective, we're measuring bio-photons emanating from the body, and there's a number of research papers out there, and pioneers in fact, who have really looked at this as a factor, the difference between a living system and a dead system, crikey, would be its emanation of biophotons. Here we see the modern technologies developed in Japan. In color, we can see how the biophotons actually leak from the fingertips with this smoker, a sort of lab technician. And very much like a flame, the sacred flame, the still flame, our inner biofield of biophotonic activity is the innermost flame, and then the emanations that we see and can measure with our equipment are the layers of this biofield. Again, looking historically, a number of different technicians, this fellow Nigel Garrion Hutchins, done a lot of research using electrographic imagery to show the correlation between the biofield of the hands and the rest of the body and emotional states. BioWell is an advancement of that Kirlian electrographic technique, and we've used this system for over 30 years, first as GDV and then BioWell, to corroborate our research that we've done into so many different energy healing techniques and devices. This is the first image of, rather pixelated image of a 3D biofield hand, and you can actually see the meridians, the sort of pink mountain range running down at least 2 of the fingers and down into the arm. And this obviously is a fascinating opportunity now as we've improved this technology to really see energetic imbalances sort of outside of the body, and they corroborate very well with people's concerns. This lady, for example, spoke about having knee pain that wasn't able to be diagnosed, but obviously it shows up clearly, and I could even pinpoint the 3 areas, the 3 hotspots, if you like. Our imaging technique, we call Biofield Viewer, but it has a number of different programs. We've just shown you the 3D system, and this is a system we call Chakra Viewer, which is very important in our Kundalini research because it allows us to focus on the chakras in a way, in a live imaging way, where the body is not being stimulated by another device. It's just a video imaging system. And as I said, in the old days, we had to rely on graphics, drawings to depict the chakras, but here, obviously, we can see them clearly with our imaging system. So I think it's worth my while quickly showing you some of this video. I'm going to take the liberty of going a little bit ahead, and I don't know whether the sound's going to be disturbing. I mean, I didn't mean that, but as I said, it's a live imaging system. I wonder if I can mute that. But anyway, the point is she's about to have what we call a phase shift, probably very similar to the Kundalini rising experience, but it's been directed by a healer. And assuming it still plays, she actually yawns, and then wow, you can see it brightens up her entire biofield. This is the brow chakra and the solar plexus, throat chakra. So, as I said, biofield imaging allows us to really observe the biofield in real time and live. In terms of the anatomical features, though, I think it is important to cover what we know. And it was interesting listening to the previous speaker addressing the Nadi system, because we see the Nadi system as a kind of fiber optics. For many, these are kind of energy channels. But with modern devices, as I said, we can pinpoint very clearly the acupuncture points. And now we've been able to identify these fiber optic strands by injecting a particular dye into the acupuncture points. And as we get access to more and more sophisticated equipment, this may be the first time you've ever actually seen an image of a meridian or a Nadi. And of course, this inspires further research now that we know they're real vessels. And as I said, they look very much like fiber optics, but when we look at them from a scientific perspective and we stimulate the vision point on the toe, which is 2 meters away from the brain, and we shine a light into the eye, by shining a light into the eye, the visual cortex obviously is illuminated, but this 2 meter jump also illuminates the visual cortex. So it's fascinating that the Oriental practitioners have been working with points which other people have ridiculed, but actually they have a very strong correlation with the facts. And if, of course, we stimulate a point just a few millimeters away from what's called the vision point, there's no, it's a scatter, and there's no obvious stimulation of the visual cortex. But what I find fascinating, that obviously light travels at the speed of light, takes a quarter of a second to reach the brain, but by stimulating this point 2 meters away, it reaches the brain in James Bond speed. And I think that's the important thing, that the network we're talking about, the Nadi system, is the body's fiber optics. It's the broadband. The nervous system is the old-fashioned copper wiring, the synapses and switches that take a while for the fan to come on. But here we're talking about faster than the speed of light. And I think that's significant as we move forward in studying how amazing healing works. Obviously, lots of pioneers in the field, such as Valerie Hunt, develops imaging systems, the Aura camera, and this is an amazing system which hopefully I'll be able to play a little bit of. And this lady getting into the lotus position, she starts omming in a few seconds, and you can see how her whole biofield brightens up like an oxyacetylene torch. Pretty amazing. And really endorses taking time out for, walking in the woods, meditation, whatever it is that we choose to do to reconnect with ourselves. So addressing my Kundalini research project that we did at MIT World Peace Center, the UNESCO facility that I spoke about earlier, we were sent a young rishi by the Kundalini Research Foundation. And he travelled for 2 days, and we first took his biofield image with a biofield viewer, and we can see a lot of congestion actually, or shielding over his brow chakra. But during the study, obviously he was able to activate and really show a beautiful symmetry and brightness in his brow chakra. And the device I mentioned earlier, a BioWell, again, he was a little bit spangled energetically when he arrived, but again, some fantastic alignment within the few images. So we had some fairly sophisticated equipment measuring this Swami, and actually this study was one of the reasons why we left MIT, because the universities, the interference from all the mobile phones and everything was disturbing us, and I think probably that may be part of the problem here actually. So yes, and here you can see my colleague actually measuring the chakras. I'll show you the end result. We can see each chakra has its own channel in the Biofield measuring device we're using, the Biofield visualization recording device. State of the art. It's actually one of only two in the world, which is an adaptation of the seismograph, so super sensitive technology, as I said, and measuring the chakras. And notice the stillness really in the chakra and the crown and the brow chakras. And here obviously a lot of energetic activity in the brow and crown. So this is what we were looking for as we measured this Rishi's energies, that he was able to control his energy, if you like, his Kundalini at will up and down his chakra system. And that's very much what we showed with this technology and in this study. Just looking at the lay person, when we measure the biofield, we often see, especially for people who live in an urban environment, a lot of shielding, as it can be depicted here as red colours. But if they go through some kind of program, and it could be as simple as my colleague was speaking to earlier, breath work, which is a fantastic tool in the modern era for re-energizing and reconnecting ourselves with our potential and the optimization that comes from that. And this, we still have areas to work on, but we're not completely in a candy floss, candy cane soup of shielding, which is what can easily happen if we're not consciously aware of our own biofield activity, if you like. So this is a common theme with everybody that we measure. If they're not sort of on top of their own well-being from a meditation, breathing perspective, they often have limitations which are a great opportunity to be corrected. And as I said, our technology is improving all the time, so we do have this opportunity to see the chakras in great detail in 3D, for example. And of course, images are beautiful, but it's important to quantify them. And I would say one of the most interesting areas of research that we're working on is that each individual has a wave shape, as can be seen from this composite graph on the bottom right. And this actually is very similar to the work we're doing with the pulse, as we measure the pulse rate. Certain work from some Russians and some French colleagues, that each pulse gives very much early warning signals of the onset of a disease, because each disease has its own wave shape. And in the same way, we can have a composite wave shape from a biofield perspective. And although disease to us is more disease, it's interesting to see that there are parallels we can take from an integrative perspective. And one of the things that I'm fascinated about is giving access to our people around the world who want to get some insights into their own well-being. And of course, there's an ancient art of face reading, so potentially we can just take a face photograph, a selfie if you like, and give someone all the information they need to know. And I have to say, I feel very empowered as I teach people around the world to use this biofield imaging technology, that they themselves are telling people what they need to hear. And they're also convincing them by opening a channel of trust, because we're speaking to issues that people know they have or may know they have. And when we can identify them live in real time in this kind of soul mirror that we call the Biofield viewer, it's a great opportunity to observe the changes, for the healee to be part of the process because they can see what's going on as the changes are taking place. So it's really like turning the lights on in the operating theatre for the individual, Kundalini journeyer, if you like, but then also for the healers and the practitioners working with energy medicine and health choice. In terms of interpreting biofield images, there's all kinds of different corroborations. I'm fascinated to say that many of the different schools of healing all speak to the same song sheet. But also we have a number of different other technologies which allow us to corroborate this. This is medical thermal imaging. This is a device called the multi-scan that does that pulse wave measurement that I was telling you about. It also allows us to see the organs in a 3D graphic, so we're not just focusing on the chakras and the meridians and the biofield, but we're also able to corroborate in a non-invasive way. This is important when we're doing our research. And of course, before and after is a very important part of that. I would just say though that along the way we do see some interesting things with biofield imaging, and in this case on the left we're seeing a biofield of a boy, but he's actually kind of left his body. I note one of my colleagues earlier was speaking about near-death experiences. This boy tragically died in a motoring accident on his bicycle, but when invited to the mortuary, we were able to image him, perhaps unaware of the techniques of travelling to other dimensions, and hear a mother and child who you can see in their eyes seem to have some kind of unusual activity, we could say. Here's another imaging technique which perhaps gives us some also important insights into integration. It uses, as you can see, basically just a Polaroid camera, but there's a machine standing next to this lady, and I think, as I understand it, she's a cardiac patient. She received a heart transplant, but certainly a transplant patient, and as I said, the machine standing next to her is a toroidal generator. It's called a bioluminator, and in the next slide you can actually see, I hope clearly, the African American lady whose heart she came with, you could say, and in fact there's quite a lot of other faces in here, and I think what's happening is modern medicine ignores this aspect of well-being and consciousness at its peril, because when we cleave somebody open and we're not conscious of who or what else can rush in, we can end up with issues perhaps we're now misdiagnosing as psychiatric or such like cases. So from my perspective, biofield imaging, multi-scan, thermal imaging are the types of tools that allow Kundalini researchers and other researchers to non-invasively observe what's going on in a completely new way. But I did want to perhaps share some insights from my perspective into the chakras, which I think most of us agree are significant anatomical features of the human biofield, but also perhaps give insights into Kundalini from a new perspective, and I think that's what today is all about. So when I think of the chakras, I also think of them as not just satellite dishes which spin off the bioplasmic waste in their form and therefore receive a cosmic harmonic frequency in return, each one perhaps set like crystal bowls to receive different cosmic frequencies. They also are dimensional lenses, kind of portals which connect us with dimensionality, and I think that's a very important thing to understand, and I hope this is a good way to explain it and a good way to understand it, because to us the first dimension emerges out of the 0 point. It's the earth element. In terms of chakras and health, it's all about grounding. We talk about fight, flight, fight or freeze. Well, they all involve the legs, either running away from something, running towards it, or being petrified. So clearly the base chakra and the legs are involved. And it's the potential world. It's the emerging world, if you like. Well, emerging into, perhaps. And it's first dimensional, so it's a point kind of emerging from itself. And this is in the schoolroom. Here I am with my piece of paper, just a point on the piece of paper. And then, for example, if I take this analogy into me as a human being taking my first breath, who's the first person I see from me to you, one dimension to two dimension? It's the mother, it's the brother, it's the other. And we get this spatial awareness from the other, the mother, the brother, especially obviously the mother. And it's not a surprise, therefore, that 2D from our perspective is the water element. It's the navel chakra. It's all about emotions, relationships, and it's the emerging world. So I may have lost you. Don't worry. I'm going to get you in the end. So here we have two dimensions, flat, stick man on a piece of paper. But our world is 3D. It's 3D. And when we speak in terms of the connections with the 3D, this is now the solar plexus. I, 1D, got to know my mother, my brother, the other, 2D, and now here I am again, the 3-year-old child, able to differentiate that I am actually looking at myself in the mirror, and I don't need to look behind to see who there is. We're talking about the fire element, solar, the fire, and space, because of course 3D is space. So what on earth am I talking about? What I'm saying is the lower 3 chakras are like gyroscopes that subconsciously keep us on our surfboard, the body, the spinning toroid, the Kundalini charge. These lower 3 chakras are constantly firing jets, plasma jets, to correct and balance, because after all, we're standing on a ball which is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and yet we feel still. That flame, in order of the candle, in order to last as long as you like, 70, 80, 100 years, it can't have a breeze on it. It can't be flickering. There needs to be a stillness. So what I'm saying is the lower 3 chakras are manifesting our presence in 3D. And therefore, when we think about the correlation with, say, Einstein, we think about the space-time continuum. So what is 4D? 4D, from this particular journey, is time, the space-time continuum. But from the chakra perspective, we're now at the heart chakra. So what I'm saying is the heart beats with time. When the rishis, when the Greeks first measured the heartbeat, it used to beat at 60 beats a minute. We're all in a rush now. So, in fact, the lower 3 chakras are the physical guidance system, north, south, east, west, up, down, that keep us on our body board. And the time element is us connecting with the wave of time. So we're effectively now present. And I hope you get what I'm saying here, because at the heart chakra, we have a presence. And this is the 4th dimension, space and time. Time is the moment. So if I can be present with you now, if I can be present with you, I then have access to what I call the higher gearbox. There's these other 3 chakras, the throat chakra, the brow chakra, and the crown chakra. And they're represented by the 5th dimension, space-time, truth, superconscious, the miraculous world. 5th dimension, obviously, is intuition, the psychic world, the brow chakra. And the 7th dimension is the ecstasy that, again, one of my colleagues was speaking a couple of lectures ago, and the divine world. And so what I'm suggesting is that if we raise the Kundalini, raise our center of consciousness as opposed to our center of gravity, we raise our center of consciousness to be present at the heart space, we're then riding on a wave of time. We're not off the board, floundering in the wake, floundering in the froth. We're not dragging tentacles in the past or sending anchors into the future. This is the real present. And when we're present at the heart center, we have access, conscious access, to raise our Kundalini up through the throat, the brow and the crown. And the key is, from our perspective, look at analogies. Look at the 7 deadly sins and the 7 heavenly virtues. 7 deadly sins speak to the corruption of the chakras. The 7 heavenly virtues speak to the mastery of the chakras. And what are the higher 3 chakras? Sloth, lust and pride. Pride comes before a fall. And the corresponding heavenly virtue here is humility. So if we remain in service, in humble service, we can maintain the aperture of what otherwise is just a silver cord, and it becomes like a fireman's pipe of divine energy. And that maintains the toroidal spin of our biofield and, of course, our shine. And I think one of the most important things that we represent as scientists is that a good measure of well-being is our shine, and we can now clearly see it with technology which is widely available. So again, I don't know how time has treated me and my lecture, but I'll definitely stop sharing my screen and thank my hosts for welcoming me to this amazing event. I'm actually way up the top of a mountain in Colorado, and so I'm happy to bring you all the fabulous crystal energy from my mountain. And God bless you all. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to interacting with you in the questions and answers and any other discussions we might have forthwith. God bless you.